Hi everyone, my name is Haley and I'm going to be leading you through a 2-hour painting. I have an example of what we are painting right here, and I'm going to go over the materials that are needed in order to create this painting. First of all, I have a jar of water, so a cup of water is fine. We have 3 brushes that we're going to be working with. First off is going to be the 1-inch flat brush, and then the number 12 flat brush. And then I have a number 4 round brush. So that's anything that's going to be small and pointed, medium and flat, and then larger and flat. We have 4 colors on our palette today, so whether that's a paper plate or a plastic palette from any craft store. We're going to be working with phthalo blue, phthalo green, titanium white, and just a black, so Mars black is fine. I'm using a reusable napkin. If you are working with paper towels, you're going to need a lot of them because our cosmic background is a paper towel technique, but I'm going to be using a sponge. You can accomplish the same thing with a paper towel, so whether you're working with a paper towel or a sponge, either way you're going to come out with something that's very similar to this. We are working with acrylic paint, so if you are wearing any kind of clothes that you don't want to get stained permanently, I would go ahead and rethink your clothing option or grab an apron, because if acrylic paint does get in your clothes, chances are you're not going to be able to get it out unless you're really quick and use like Windex. So if you spray Windex in your clothes and you're very fast, it's not dried in, you could potentially get it out, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to stain your clothes. So just a word of warning. And if you are drinking anything else besides having paint water nearby, so if you have like a coffee or some wine or water, I would be really careful not to stick your paintbrushes into your cup. I know that sounds kind of silly, but I do it all the time. My paintbrushes tend to gravitate more towards my drink than they do towards the jar. So just be really conscious of where you're sticking your paintbrushes whenever we go to clean them off. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be working with is that 1-inch flat brush, so go ahead and grab that. I am working on a 16 by 20 inch canvas. My canvas is repurposed, so I already had something that had the same color palette as we're working with today. So if you have a 16 by 20 inch canvas that's just plain white, that's totally fine. That's ideal. I just have a lot of canvases and I reuse them a lot. So this is something that I had painted on, painted over, and now started something, and then it just worked out that it's the same color palette. So I'm just going to go ahead and work on this, but just follow my instructions. We're kind of going to be covering up all this stuff anyways. It's just a similar color palette, that's all. So we're going to go ahead and grab that 1-inch flat brush again. And then we are going to go ahead and dip right into our phthalo blue. So just, grab a good amount of it. And then you're just going to dab that phthalo blue onto the canvas. So I started on the right corner. So just starting in the right corner, just kind of dab that in. So you want big globs of it. So just big globs of that phthalo blue. So go from the right to the middle, kind of to the left side. And then I'm just going to go ahead and set that 1-inch flat brush into my water cup. And then I'm going to take my sponge, or in your case, paper towel. So you're just going to bunch up a paper towel. And then you're just going to go ahead and just so this is dabbing, so we're just going to dab that bit of paint. So you're just picking it up and putting it down. So we're just pulling it down. And you can already kind of see the texture that it's giving. If you have a white canvas, you're going to be able to see this a little bit better. So you can kind of see what's happening here. So we're creating that cosmic look, so it kind of makes it look like gas, you know, so the transitions are really nice. And when you pick it up and pull it down, you get those like lingering little like dots of stuff that is already, you know, that has been on your sponge or your paper towel. And it's going to carry down. And it creates that really nice like galaxy type look. So whether you're doing it with a sponge or a paper towel, you're going to accomplish the same look. Okay, so now that you have your phthalo blue on the background of your canvas, just real quick, you can carry those blues onto the side if you want. So if you want your canvas to have a really finished, professional look to it, you want to go ahead and like carry that phthalo blue onto the sides as well. So you can use a brush to accomplish that, or you can just go ahead and take your paper towel and like dab. So anywhere that like blue is, you're going to touch blue to blue. And just go ahead and, you know, dab that on either side of your canvas, wherever blue is touching. We just want to make sure that it's completely painted on all four sides. A lot of the time people forget to do the bottom. We are going to do that when we get down to the water. So we'll have an opportunity to do the bottom as well. And then we are going to also do the top. The top is going to be more black. You can see up here that we have like kind of a black top. So we'll go ahead and just go in with black. You can transition from color to color, so whether you want to pick up with a paper towel first, or if you want to continue on picking up with a brush, if you want to pick up with a brush, that's totally fine. You can just take the brush out of your water cup, dry it off on a napkin. It doesn't matter if it still has some blue in it right now, since we're moving from color to color to create this background. It's totally fine if it still has a little bit of blue in it, because we are like blending these colors in together. It's okay if you get like blue into your white, or you know, blue into the black. Like we're going to create that blending anyways. So you can also just go ahead and grab black. So the top of my canvas is already pretty black, but I'm going to go ahead and just tap some of that black in around the top of my canvas. So just the same idea, you're just tapping that black in with the brush or with a paper towel, your choice. And then I'm just throwing my paintbrush back in my water cup. I'm putting it back in my water cup so that the brush doesn't dry out with paint in it. It would ruin the brush. We want to keep our brush, you know, soft and flexible. So just keep it in the water cup when you're not using it. And then you just want to go ahead and dab that black down into those blues. So same idea, same technique. We're just pulling that black down, so you can see how it's starting to blend into the blue. Then also, yeah, go ahead and just like tap those blacks up onto the top while you're up here. So you just want to pull the blacks down. And you can pull some of them down further than others. That's totally fine. We want it to be really nice and really blended into each other. So I'm just going to keep pulling those blacks down because it'll give it that galaxy look. So you can see the transitioning like starting to happen, where you have that transition between like the blacks down into the blues, and then if your canvas is white down here, we're going to be adding more of those like blues, greens, and whites down here. So just adding that little bit of black in at first is going to help us get those like really nice color pops of the white on top whenever we add that white in. You are gonna have to like switch napkins pretty often. So with my sponge, I have a little bit more time to work with it because the sponge kind of like dries out. But with a paper towel, it kind of keeps some of the paint in, and you need like dry paper towels in order to pull and create this effect. So if your like napkin is really saturated with a lot of like blue or black, go ahead and just throw that one away and then grab another one. You're gonna go through a lot of napkins during this like layering of your galaxy, and that's totally fine. It does take a lot of napkins in order to get the effect that you need for the galaxy. So yeah, just go ahead and grab another napkin. If it's too wet, has too much paint on it, and just like keep dabbing. You want to dab it out to the point where it's like your paint should be pretty much dry, you know, by the time you get done like dabbing. Like there's going to be a couple wet spots, but like for the most part, you have pulled it down so much that it's gone into the fabric of the canvas and kind of dried out pretty instantaneously. So the next little color that I'm working with is that phthalo green. So we have a little bit of that phthalo green like up in here, just a little bit. So I'm just going to go in and like tap in some of this phthalo green. If you want more green or more blue or more black or more white, you can do any of those things. Like this is your painting, you should be creative with it. But like I'm just going to add just a little bit of this green in because I like the touch of it. And you can see how I'm taking that green and I'm pulling it up. So I'm pulling it up into that black. Because I want it to blend. So I want it to blend into what I'm already doing, so that's where I'm pulling it up. So I'm bringing it up on both sides, into that dark, into that blue. See, I'm pulling it up into the blues and into the blacks, so that way it's keeping with the same idea of blending, so it's blending into those top colors. So once you add in as much green as you want in your background, I'm going to go ahead and stick with that. I don't want too much green in my background. I just want a hint of it. I'd rather have more of the green in the water. So I'm just going to, so I'm mimicking green because it's in my water. So that's why I'm adding just a little bit of it up into the galaxy. But I am going to just leave it right there. If you want more green, like I said, that's totally an option. If you love the green, go with the green. But yeah, I'm content with having just those hints of green in the top, and then I'm going to have more in the water. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to mix a light blue. So I'm just going to make sure there's no black in my paintbrush from me tapping black into the top. So to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and take that brush, and I'm just going to tap it at the bottom of my water cup. So it's going to help release the paint from the bristles. And then I'm just going to take my napkin, and I'm just going to dry it off. So you're just going to make sure it's really dry, pretty dry, but just make sure there's no black in it, because we don't want any black in our light blue. So our light blue kind of transitions up into the black. So once your paintbrush is dry, you're going to take your palette or your paper plate, and then you're just going to grab a little bit of phthalo blue, and you're going to find a little spot on your palette or your paper plate that doesn't have any wet paint. And then you're going to put that phthalo blue, and you're going to take some of the white, and you're just going to mix that white in. So I'm going to go pretty light with it, so I'm adding more white. You can kind of choose what shade of blue you would like. If you want it lighter, just add more white. If you want it darker, just keep a little bit more blue. So I'm going to go about like this, which is kind of like a sky blue. So I'm just going to take this little sky blue and then I'm going to just kind of tap into my canvas. So I'm just going to go like about that. So I'm just tapping that wet paint onto the canvas. I'm not dragging or anything with the brush a whole lot. I'm just kind of tapping it in. And I'm going to do all the work with my sponge or paper towel. So just, taking your sponge or your paper towel and then just tapping that. So you're going to pull it up and down. So you can see how I'm tapping, but I'm pulling it up and I'm pulling it down. So I'm pulling it up into those greens on the side and down. And if you need to add more color, just add a little bit more to your brush or to your paper towel and then go ahead and just pull it up, pull it down. So it's okay if you get some of this down towards like what's going to be our water. It's even okay if you pull some down into it for now because we can just go right over it with our brush, and we do have some black here as well to create this little island, land. So we can just go back over like with black, and it's going to cover up whatever we have been putting down at the bottom of this canvas. So I'm going to kind of leave that as like my light blue for now, and I'm going to add a little bit of white. So what I want to do is I want to add in this little trail right here. So this is like kind of like my constellations or my galaxy that's up in the sky. So I'm just going to go ahead and add this like white little trail in, and then add some more white down towards the bottom. And then we're going to add more phthalo blue like on top of that. So you can just take your napkin or your sponge or your brush and then tap right into just a little bit of white. And then I'm going to go ahead and set some of that white down here. And then I'm also going to trail out where I want my galaxy to move from. So you can kind of see like I mapped out my little galaxy, and then I also have some white coming up from the sides over here. So this is kind of what it's starting to look like. It's kind of piecing it together at this point, which is going to look a lot better once we layer a little bit more color into it. But you can see how it's starting to like take its shape. Once you are content with where your white is placed, I'm just going to go ahead and tap into just a little bit more of that phthalo blue. And then I'm going to start adding in some more of that phthalo blue. So just tapping and pulling, same type of technique we were working with before. I'm going to go ahead and pull some of that up into that black. And then pull some of it down into those lighter blues. So you can kind of see like the difference that it's making already by just adding back in those blues. And we're just making sure that we're covering the whole canvas. And I'm even tapping some right on the edges of my little like galaxy in my sky, so the white that we added in. So just tapping some along those edges. So again, picking up and putting down, so tap, 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 tap. So pulling up, pulling down, up and down. I wouldn't really get like super hung up on your background. Just remember that a good portion of it is going to get a little bit covered because we are going to add this moon in. So that'd be like, you know, about this much of your canvas. So if you don't really like the way that it's looking underneath, that's okay. Just remember this is just the background and we are going to be adding more into it. It's not the whole picture, it's just the background. I am going to go ahead and take just a little bit more black. And I'm just going to tap that black in and kind of pull it down into some of those lighter colors, just to give it a little bit more. So I'm just giving it more layering. So you can kind of see how that's adding more definition to it too, like adding more depth. So you can kind of see like how all of these colors are creating that like depth to the galaxy of our sky. So now I'm going to go back in with just a little bit more white. Maybe like a slightly lighter blue. I'm just going to tap that light in. And you can kind of see how that's like really starting to give it like a really nice finish because of those lighter colors. So you can kind of see how it's starting to make it look complete, the background, the layering of it. The more you tap in those like lights just kind of throughout, it really gives it that, you know, galaxy look. So we're just going to go ahead and finish up with this light blue white. So this really, really, really light blue, more so white than blue. just kind of go through and add it towards the bottom of your canvas. And then once we finish that, we're going to go ahead and add stars into the background. So just, continue on with your napkins. Make sure that they are dry. Make sure that you're switching out napkins pretty frequently. You don't want to keep pulling paint, because if you get too much paint on the canvas, it's not going to give it this textured look, right? So it's got to be like less paint. The dry napkin helps pull some of the paint off the canvas that you put on with the brush. So that's why we're switching out napkins pretty consistently throughout the dabbing practice. Like I said, my sponge absorbs and gets really dry pretty quickly, so it keeps kind of the texture throughout without me having to really like switch out for anything, which is why I like having the sponges around, because they're reusable. I can wash them out, and they have longevity, so I'm not wasting a whole bunch of napkins, so I try and be really conscious about being wasteful with my paint, because I have taught painting classes for the past 4 years. I've been studio managers at different various art studios, and I really noticed like a lot of the waste that was happening at the studios, and I saw a lot of really simple ways to avoid that waste. So instead of using like paper plates, you can use plastic palettes and just wash them off. Like the paint peels off my palette all the time. Like even if I let it dry onto it, like I can peel off all of the paint and have a clean palette again. So plastic palettes, sponges, reusable napkins. So that's kind of what I do with my practice, because I don't like to be wasteful. So we're just going to continue on with the the bottom half, or the top half of our canvas, which is the bottom of our galaxy sky. So we're just going to go through and like tap this last little bit of color in, and then we're going to add stars into it, and then you're really going to get those like popping whites and stuff up here, which is what I have, like the stars. So I'll show you a technique for that as soon as we finish off the background of our sky. Okay, so once you're done with your background and you've gotten it about halfway down from the canvas, so we're like about halfway now, like I said, if you went past the halfway mark, that's totally fine, because we're going to just cover it up anyways. So mine is just like about halfway, because that's, I knew to stop about then. But like I said, no big deal if you went past that point. It's totally fine. We can just paint right over it, no big deal. So to make stars, we are going to be working with that number 12 flat brush. So what you're going to do is add a whole lot of water onto a place on your palette that has no paint. So just stick it in your water cup and then just pick up some of that water and just kind of squeeze it out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of white and I'm going to add it into that water. And the white is going to, it's okay if it's like not exactly a white color, like if your water in your cup was blue or, you know, more like light blue or like whatever, that's totally fine. When you add the white in, the stars are still going to come out white on the canvas. But you want it to be so runny that like if you tilt your canvas, like it's going to run. It's going to run across it. It's going to be so watery. And you're just going to tap your flat brush into that watery white. And then you're just going to take you're going to hold it upright. You're going to take your finger and you're just going to flick. So just flick, and then that creates stars across your canvas. So all I did, get a little closer. Okay, so you can kind of see like all the little stars that I just added in, and all I did was take and flick. So that creates stars across your canvas. If your stars are super like stringy, you can consider that to be a shooting star. Or if you don't like the stringiness of it, if it's too stringy, add more water. So the more watery it is, the less stringy stars you're going to get. And you can add different color stars in there as well. So you can add, like, if you want green, you can go ahead and do the same thing, same concept with the green, which is just like water, a whole lot of water, adding a little tiny bit of green. You can also use like the water mixture you already have and just take a tiny bit of green and then add that in. So that's going to change the color of the water mixture. So that's what I just did. I just changed the color of that mixture. You can see it's still extremely runny. And then same idea. So all you're going to do is just like take your finger and then you can flick green stars all the way across. And you can do the same thing with blue, you can do the same thing with black. However many colorful stars you want in the sky, it's totally up to you. I'm going to go ahead and just stop with white and green. I like the way that looks, so I'm just going to leave it white and green, but you're welcome to add dark blue stars in, or more of a different color if you wanted to add like yellow or, you know, whatever color you have in your house. You're welcome to add more color into it. I'm just going to go ahead and stick with this color palette. So I'm going to stick my flat brush into my water cup. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick back up my 1-inch flat brush, so my bigger brush. And I'm going to start mapping out my water towards the bottom. So I'm going to start with that phthalo blue, so just get a whole lot of phthalo blue on your paintbrush. And then I'm going to start towards the right side, so I'm just going to pull that blue in towards the center of the canvas. And then same idea on the other side, so I'm just pulling that in. This is the bottom half of the canvas that I'm working on. If you turn your brush sideways and hold it and lightly pull in, you're going to get more of that, that streakiness, which is really nice in water. So it kind of gives it that, you know, you can see like these like ripples. That's almost what it looks like. And we're just kind of paving the way for this reflection, you know, so you're just going to zigzag that in. So I'm just kind of creating my idea, so like kind of my structure of what I want my water to look like towards the center. And then you can go ahead and grab some green, some of that phthalo green as well. And then you're just going to go ahead and do the same thing. So coming from the outside, pulling that phthalo green in. You do not have to wash your brush off in between. So we are blending. We do want those colors to mix together. So it's totally okay if you still have phthalo blue on your brush when you get phthalo green. And then just, you know, pull that through. Pull that in. And I'm just going to keep working this color in towards the center. So I'm going to switch between the blue and the green. So I'm kind of just making some executive decisions and kind of deciding where I want my like greens and blues to be. And then I'm just going to go ahead and stick my brush right into that white. So it doesn't matter if it has blue and green on it. I'm just going to go ahead and stick it in, and then I'm just going to go through the center, and then I'm just going to pull that white through. So the white is going to help create the blending. White is such an amazing color for blending. So then it really starts to give that like reflection look. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick with white and move it down. And I'm zigzagging it here as well. So I'm just pulling those darks in towards the center. And then I'm also pulling that light out towards the ends. And that's helping me blend. So you can kind of see the texture that I'm accomplishing. So just moving my brush in towards the center. And then taking that white and then going through and pulling the white out. And make sure that you're covering your entire canvas. You want to make sure that you're not getting any of the white from the canvas itself, like the background of the canvas through. So you want to make sure that you're completely getting paint everywhere, even if that is like white paint. You want your canvas to be covered in white, or covered in paint, so blue, green, white, just completely covered. So make sure that you're not getting any of those like spots from the canvas behind. So once you have paint coming all the way through the water, even if it's not perfect, that's totally fine. Like we can go back in and add some more color after we do our moon. Well, we're going to have like a little bit of a break, so that'll give you time to go back through and kind of play with your water, or fix any little changes, you know, anything that you want different. So you can go back through and kind of play with your sky, or you know, add more texture or color into your water. But we're going to go ahead and just stick that flat brush in your water cup. And we're going to switch back to the flat, number 12 flat brush for now. And then if you need to refill your paint, go ahead and refill. I'm out of white. Yeah, so I'm just going to take some white itself on this flat brush. And we will be going through a lot of colors, a lot of paint kind of through this. So if you need to refill your blue or your white or your black or your green, that's totally fine. Just add more paint as needed. No big deal. So yeah, we're going to take our white that's on our flat brush, and we're going to kind of map out where we want our moon to be. So if you have a paper plate, this is super easy. All you have to do is just like put your paper plate on your canvas and then trace it. So you're just going to, mark out where the paper plate starts and ends. If you don't have a paper plate, you kind of have to eyeball it. It's a little bit tougher. Like, you're not going to make a perfect circle. This isn't even a perfect circle, okay? Like, I don't make perfect circles. I don't think anyone really does, except, if you're using a tool for it. So it's totally fine if it's not perfect. Just kind of eyeball and guess. So I'm going to start out like kind of more towards the middle. And then I'm just going to go ahead and like kind of map out where I want my moon to be. And then you can kind of adjust it from there. So yeah, so it looks about good to me. I'm going to go ahead and take my white and just fill it in. So we're only doing half of it, so half the moon. I would suggest, if you're eyeballing your moon, to go ahead and start out smaller. You can always like add a little bit more into it, but if your moon gets too big, it's hard to take it off. So start with less, and then you can add more if you need it. So just go ahead and fill in your moon with that white. So once you have your moon completely white, we're going to go ahead and add these other colors into it. So if you want your moon to be like a blue moon, you can add more of the blues in. If you want it to look more like the moon itself, I would just add like, the grays and the black. blacks into it. We're going to go ahead and use the same flat brush. You don't even have to wash off the white. I just stuck it in my water cup, so you don't really have to wash your brush off for this, since we are like blending it in. You do want it to be somewhat dry in order to add color on top of it. So mine is pretty dry. If you added a lot of paint, that's okay too, but you know, you're just gonna have to like tap in more of like the whites and stuff in order for it to not be so translucent, so like seeing the stuff behind it. So yeah, I'm just gonna start out with white. So like I said, you didn't even have to wash your brush off. And then all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do this tapping method with it. So I'm just gonna like tap my brush, you know, pick it up, put it down, tapping, dabbing. And then I'm going to do the same idea with like black. So I'm going to mix a gray first. So just somewhere on your palette where you don't have paint, you can just take a little bit of black and then add some white into it. I'm going to start out with a little bit darker of a gray. And then I'm just going to go from the right side of my moon. I'm just going to tap that gray in. And then you can go back on top of it with some white. And you see how we're getting those like variations of gray now? So just be careful around the edges of your moon. You want it to stay in its shape generally. So just slow down if you're on the edges. And you do want some of that gray to be a little bit darker. So you can go back in with like a little bit of black and then pull that black up or into those lighter colors. So that way you get those variations as you're moving. So you can see it's starting to kind of come together. You're getting those darker colors, and that transition between like the light and the dark side of the moon. So I'm just moving back and forth between the dark, so adding the black in, and then, you know, pulling the white and black towards each other. So that way you get that blending. I'm still dabbing, but I'm also pulling. And then I'm just going to start adding more white into it as we move from the dark side to the light side. And because of that gray that's on my brush, I'm having to add a little bit more white more frequently, which is fine. So I just want that transition. So I'm trying to get that transition of color. Again, be careful around the edges of your moon. You want to keep it shaped. If the bottom of your moon isn't like, doesn't look like super amazing, that's totally fine. We are adding this into it, so our little island and our tree are going to be covering. So that's really great because if you have spots that you don't like, you can just cover it up with, you know, pieces of your island or the tree itself. So easy to hide mistakes that you are not super fond of. So I'm still allowing some of that gray to carry over into the light side of the moon. I'm just periodically adding more white than black. I'm just adding more white onto my brush over and over again because I want this to be the lighter side. If you want blue in your moon, it's the same idea as like adding these darks in, except you'd just be adding it in with the phthalo blue. So it's starting to get texture now. You can kind of see. I'm sorry, the light in my room is not doing me favors at the moment. Yeah, so you can kind of see like how it's going from that dark and how the darks are still pulled in over here. You can, of course, adjust. So if you want a little bit more dark in the light side of your moon, you can add more of that darkness in. So just continuing on with that tapping motion. So I'm pretty happy with the way that it's looking right now. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put my number 12 flat brush in my water cup, and then I'm just gonna leave it there. We are gonna take about a 10 to 15 minute break at this point. We need our moon to dry before we start adding the black on top. Otherwise our tree would just turn gray. So we are just gonna go ahead and take a break. At this point, if you wanted to like kind of touch up your background, add more stars, if you wanted to mess around with your water a little bit, that's totally fine. We are going to be adding more white into our water once we add, you know, the tree in, because we're going to have to do the reflection. So we do have an opportunity to add more color and more white into our water in just a little bit. But yeah, so if you are, you know, like needing a break, if you're feeling frustrated, just, you know, go ahead and stop and step back. Like, don't step really close to your painting, just look at it from afar, because that's the way that people are going to be seeing it when they walk into your house. They're not going to be like looking at every little mistake that you see because you've been really, really close to your canvas the whole time. So just step back, look at your painting as a whole, and then you can kind of assess, you know, like what you would like to fix versus how it looks from afar. So just go ahead and take a break, about 10 to 15 minutes for our moon to dry. The way you can tell if your paint is dry is if you just go ahead and like, if you run your finger across, so just like tap it, And then if paint comes off on your finger, then you know you got to give it a little bit more time. Just be really light-handed when you touch it, so that way you're not messing up your textures. And if you need to get a drink, get a snack, smoke, I don't know, if you're drinking, refill, you know, your beer or wine or whatever beverage, and just, you know, sit back and wait. This is the fun part, watching paint dry. All right, so now that our painting is dry, we're gonna go ahead and add in our little island back there. So we are working with that number 12 flat brush. Just go ahead and take it out of your water cup and dry it off on a napkin. And then we're just gonna dip straight into black. So we are using the edge of our brush to get this island back here in. So we're just going to be really light-handed. You're going to hold your brush like up, and then we're just going to go right here in between the water and the moon. And then you can kind of add these like hills. So we're just going to go ahead and bring that island all the way down to the water. So you're just going to fill that in. You're just going across and you're just adding kind of a like hilly type landscape. So it looks a little bit different than the one I have up there, and that's totally fine. You just want to make sure that the bottom of it is straight across. So the bottom of your island is straight all the way across. So that's pretty straight across. That's not too perfect. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and stick that number 12 flat brush back into the water cup. And then I'm going to switch over to the number 4 round brush. So anything that's like, you know, has a point to it, because we're doing detail work with this tree. So again, we're just dipping right into the black. And then we can kind of decide where we want to place our tree. So for this one up here, I have it in between my 2 little hills. So that's where I'm going to put it, right in here. You might want to place it a little bit differently, and that's totally fine. So I'm just making a little triangle, connecting it down to my land. So this is going to be the base of the tree. So I'll hold it a little closer. So you can kind of see I did a triangle. That's the base of my tree. And then from here, I'm just going to start branching off. So you can just start. You want to be really, really light-handed and make sure you don't have too much paint on your brush. So I like to take my little brush and like roll it, and that helps get some of the paint off. And then I'm going to be really, really light-handed while I kind of map out my branches. So the more light-handed you are, the smaller your lines will be. And two of the techniques with painting branches is that one is that when you are driving and you get onto the freeway, like you slowly like merge onto the freeway. You don't just like jump out into traffic. And branches kind of move the same way, so they are like subtly growing like out. So if you paint them and you just kind of jump them out, just add a little bit more paint and kind of make it merge. And then the second one is to just be really light-handed. So you just want to like have control of your brush, so you're going to hold it really close to the bristles, and then be really, really light-handed, just barely touch. And as you get to the end of your branches, you are going to lift the pressure. So you're going to be pushing a little bit harder at first, and then you're going to like start lifting off, and then that's how you're going to get those really, really thin lines. So I'm just going to go ahead and branch some of the branches off of my branches. So I'm just making Ys, so like forks. So my structure right here, I'm just going to take that and then I'm just going to fork off of it. So I'm just going to be really, really light-handed while I do this because I'm starting to get into like the thinner branches at the top as well. So just go through, you can add them, make them a little bit longer, and then just fork off of your main three, which is what I have right here. I have 3 branches, and I'm just going to take it up, and then I'm going to fork off of those 3.
distractions. Time to myself to realize what I might have taken for granted. I slept in my casket, see my life slip away, see my inaction take control, cause I was too afraid of the last, the judgment, the pain of uncertainty. My veins pumped self-destruction, negative consumption. I needed to start over from the ground up. I think I finally found love through construction, through progress, from a goal that I meant to reinvent my process. These chains of constructs.
So I'm going to stop about here. So I just added a few forks off of my branches. And then we're going to add on the little, like the top of the trees, so the leaves. You're just going to stick that little brush. You're just going to stick your little number 4 round brush into your water cup, and we're going to switch it out for that flat brush once again. That number 12 flat brush, the medium brush. So once you have that brush cleaned off, we're just going to stick it back into, that black. And then we are going to add the leaves by tapping. So we're just going to be like tapping the leaves in. So I'm just going to set it right on top of my branches. And then I'm just going to tap. So you're going to just tap over the top of your branches, and you're also going to pull it down in just a little bit. So you don't want to cover up all of that detail work that you did, with, your nice thin lines. But you do want it to look like a tree that has branches or leaves on the inside as well. So you're giving it that depth by tapping all the way through. So I'll show you. So you can kind of see like the texture. So you don't want it to be fully blacked out. So you want that light to be able to shine through. So I didn't have too much black on my brush when I did it. All I did was just tap and move up and down. So tap, 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 moving up and down. And then that's how I created the look of the leaves. Once you have your leaves on your tree, we're going to go ahead and add highlight into our tree and on our little mountainscape or our, little island. So we're just going to take a little bit of white. Oh, we're switching brushes, so switch back over to that number 4 round brush. And then you're just going to take a little bit of white and you're just going to run some white on the top of this landscape. It doesn't have to be perfect. So just kind of something like that. You can add some more like lights into the top of it if you want. So I'm just pulling it down and I'm just like blending out into the land itself. So once you have that, little bit of white, all I'm doing is just kind of moving my brush back and forth and then like pulling down And I'm just adding a little bit more white. So this is just the highlight. So basically the idea of the light coming from the moon so that you're able to distinguish between the land. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty happy with that highlight. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to do the same thing on the tree itself. So I'm just going to go up the tree branch, like from the bottom. I started in the bottom left. And I'm just going to move up and then kind of follow my branches to give it a highlight. Sorry, you guys can probably hear my cat meowing like crazy.
I recognize I'm infinite. The system dictates my limits. Opinions inhibit judgment, and judgment corrupts your vision. Apply belief is dangerous to dissonance and cognition. The media is a cancer, but cancerous. Back your mind, the agenda's designed.
So I kind of just bring this up closer so you guys can see the highlight that I did. So there's that highlight down at the bottom, and then the highlight running up on the trees, the tree branches. So it's just really light-handed when I went up and traced the tree branches. And then, you know, I just pulled that down and kind of blended it into the black as I moved the white down to get that highlight. And then from this point, we're going to go ahead and flip our canvas upside down. And we're going to continue on with that brush, the pointed one, the number 4 round brush. And then we're going to grab black again. So the reason we turned it upside down is so that way we can mirror our tree into the water. So I find that turning it upside down is helpful. If you want to do it right side up, that's totally fine too. But I think that, you know, like if you do it upside down, it actually helps you recreate it underneath. So, you know, you can kind of like line up where your tree is.
Our frequencies can frequently align with disharmony and consistency.
So you can do the same thing upside down. And then you're just going to mimic the tree.
I will not be afraid or support anymore. I will rejoice in freedom, remove my shackles, be a beacon of light, a flickering candle. The battle is won with love. I will not give up.
So yeah, you just want to follow the template of the tree on the top. So I'm just running the same type of branches through. So it's going to look similar. It doesn't look exactly the same. There's a saying when you do makeup, it's called sisters, not twins. So that's like talking about your eyes. Because a lot of time, if I do a really good wing on one side, I can't recreate the exact same wing on the other side. So same idea. So this is like sisters, not twins, you know, so like similar, but it doesn't have to be exact. And then once you have the template of your tree on the bottom part, you're just going to go ahead and go back in with your number 12 flat brush, and then do the same thing for the leaves that we did on the top side. So all you're going to do is just tap that in.
Something's not right. It don't add up. Have I lost my grip? Running in circles, trying to follow my bliss. How wrong I was. Engulfed in ignorance, blind about love. Intentions were pure. Intentions are meaningless. Intention is defeated in obedience. Misguided.
So that's going to be our mirror of the tree on the top. And the cool thing is, because it doesn't look super exact, like we're going to go over it with light and reflection and color. So you're just going to go ahead and wash off your 12-inch flat brush. And then you're going to tap into a little bit of white. And then with this white, we're just going to go ahead and we're just going to run the white back and forth through kind of what we just did. Well, be careful because it might still be wet. If your tree is still wet and it's starting to get gray, we're going to go actually work through some of the blues. So you can grab a little bit of phthalo blue, and then we're going to go ahead and add some of that on the outside. So all I'm doing is just adding some of those darks back in. I'm pulling them in towards the center. Kind of just working on my water while I wait for that tree to dry. And then you can do the same thing with the greens. So just going through and adding some more green.
To be free, you must ride the tide entirely, journey through polarities.
So what's next? How do I
And if your tree is dry, that's when we're going to go ahead and add some of that white across. So just be really light-handed. So we want it to look like a reflection. So just adding that white and pulling it in to the center and then out. You get that really cool, look like it actually is just the reflection of the tree and like the water is moving. So just working those whites in. And you're just kind of zigzagging those whites back and forth all the way towards the bottom. You're just being really, really light-handed as you pull these whites in and through. Allowing that reflection of the moonlight to come through. And then once you get that reflection of the light, that's about where we are going to end it. So everything should look pretty well pulled together. So you have those darks on the outside, the light zigzagging through the center for the water, and hopefully you are happy with your painting. If you guys wanted to go through and like touch anything up at this point, you're totally welcome to. Also, like, don't forget, you know, to paint the bottom of your canvas. If you were painting your edges, you know, if you were adding those blues and greens, and then like the blue of the waters on the sides, you want to go ahead and like make sure you don't forget to paint the bottom as well. And yeah, once you're happy with your painting, you can go ahead and throw a signature and a date on the bottom. So like, be proud of your work, sign your work. That's a lesson I learned through creating art over the years. I used to not sign my artwork because I didn't feel very proud of it. But at this point, you know, like, I'm like very proud of my art and happy that I created something, and you should be too. So you should just go ahead and throw your signature on there and display it in your house proudly. And if you enjoyed this painting and would like to potentially check out some of my original works, or like get a print or a commission done for me, it is foxtailartwork.com. And my email is right there, haley8adams@gmail.com. I do commissions. I have prints, I have framed prints, I have canvas prints, and then I have originals available on my website. And if you would like to donate, I do have a Bitcoin address dropped down with this video, and I appreciate any support, any donations. If you don't feel like donating, that's totally fine, but I do appreciate it. It is fueling a passion of mine, and I would definitely like to do more painting videos, painting classes, and things for people who are interested. So yeah, if you would like to donate, there is that option. I do take crypto. So yeah, thank you guys so much for following along. Again, my name is Haley, and I hope you guys had a wonderful painting class.